Hi, welcome back to part 2 of my retouch and colorize demo. We're going to get to the coloring today. If you haven't already checked out part 1 of this video, we talked about how to retouch an old photograph. I had to split the video into 2 parts because it just was getting a little too lengthy. Again, you can see that there are some student examples here of some old photos that are retouched and colorized. So let's get started talking about how to add color to an old black and white photograph. It's important to know that you cannot start the coloring process until it is completely fixed. So if you still have like rough little parts on it, the original one looked like this. For those of you that weren't here, we did a bunch of stuff to it. We put the 2 halves back together and then we fixed all the damage that was on it. So the next step is to do the coolest shortcut that Photoshop has, and that is the Command-Option-Shift-E shortcut, which you probably won't remember the first time you do it, but after you do it a few times, you'll be like, coolest shortcut ever. And I'll show you what that's going to do. In the layers, we have several layers here. Everything that we've done is all stacked on top of one another. I don't want to flatten the image because if I, for some reason, need to go back to when it looked like one of these other stages, I would be able to do that. So doing Command, Option, Shift, you hold down Command, Option, and Shift, and press the letter E. What that does is it makes a copy of all the layers on one new layer. So it basically goes copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, put it on top of the stack. Command, Option, Shift, E is the shortcut. So now I have this new version of the kid. He's all fixed up. I don't want to color. When I'm coloring, I don't want to color on gray. I want to color on sort of like a brownish tone. So if someone was to make an oil painting, a lot of times what they'll do is something called an underpainting. And they do the underpainting with different shades of brown, dark browns, light browns. And we're going to do that. We're going to basically tone this to make it brown. How do you do that? Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. You click the Colorize box. Just like when you colorized your photograms, it's the same thing. I'm going to pick like this orangey brownish color. I'm going to pull the saturation down a little bit. So it's somewhere in this area. You see how it's more brown than it is black and white. So you can see here that before it looked like that and after it looks like that, which is a much nicer base color to work off of. Now here comes the painting part, and this gets a little complicated. And for those of you that have done paintings before, portrait paintings, some of this will sound familiar to you. Those of you that have not ever painted someone before, that doesn't mean that you can't do this. It just means you need to know a couple little rules or a couple little tips or tricks. Well, first of all, before you start to paint, you should make a new layer, a blank layer. So I'm going to click on the new layer icon, which is going to give me a new layer at the top. And I want to set this layer to color, but we're going to come back to that for in 1 second here. Tell me what color you think this background was, and we'll get started with it. What color do you think the background was? It's just a guess. What? Did somebody say white? It can't be white. So you cannot color white, and you cannot color black. You cannot color gray. So what we're going to be doing is we have to color with color. Everything needs to be colored in the entire photo. So the first one that I heard was blue, so we'll go with a blue. I don't know what color the background was. It's just a guess. So I could pick a color like this and go around the color picker and be like, I think it was this color right here, and start painting. Now, if I don't do this correctly, here's what it ends up looking like. Ready?
What?
You're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I ever do that? If you forget to change the blend mode in the layers palette from normal to color, it will look like that. So when I switch it to color, because that's what we're doing, changing the colors, change the blend mode to color, that's what happens.
Oh.
So I got blue on his face, but you can see all the values are there. The photo is there. I'm just coloring it a different color. So I'm going to go ahead and paint. Now when you do this, the first tip is to paint from the back to the front. So you look at your photograph, whatever it is, and you say, what is the thing furthest away from the camera? And in that case, it's the wall, or in this case, it's the wall. If you're doing, a photo of people outside, you would paint probably the sky, and then you would work your way back up to the foreground. Since we're starting in the back, it doesn't matter that I'm getting stuff on the kid. I don't need to be careful. because I'm working from the back to the front. Now, as I work my way to the front, I need to be more careful. Another thing you might notice is that I've used a really hard edge brush. So the edge of the brush, you know that you can change from 100% hardness, you could go to 0% hardness, back and forth. You're probably either going to be here or here. Most of the time, you're going to be here because we want the edge of the color to be very soft. And I'll show you that in just a second. Now, rather than come down here and just always go, well, I've got, you know, a million different colors to choose from and different shades of the color, what we're going to do is we're going to use swatches. You go to Window at the top of the screen. You go down to Swatches, which is right here. And then you get probably like, 64 crayons in a digital box right here. You'd be like, well, I need pink or purple or whatever. This isn't a lot of colors. We want more colors. So there's a way to get a bigger box of crayons. And the way that you do that is you click on this little arrow with the lines and you choose a color library called True Match Colors right there. So I click on True Match Colors. We can pick the other colors, but True Match is the best one for doing what we're doing. The other color libraries are slightly bigger, smaller, different. This is the one you want to use. So choose True Match Colors as your box of crayons. Click OK, and now look at all the colors we have to choose from. We don't have a box of 64. We have a box of like 3,000. I don't know how many different shades there are, but you've got your pinks and your oranges and your yellows and your greens and your blues. And you scroll down, you got your neutral colors down here and your earth tones and all this good stuff. Now, you are coloring an old photograph, so you do not want it to be in high definition color. We don't want to pick really saturated fluorescent colors. We want to tone it down a little bit because it is an old photo, and if you color it really brightly and obnoxious, it's going to look bright and obnoxious and fake, and that's no good. And I'm going to show you how to tone down the color in just a second. So working from back to front is important. Back to front. The next thing that's important is that you don't just use one color. You mix a bunch of colors together. So what we want to do now is I'm going to take the brush and I'm still working on my background. I still want it to be blue, but I'm going to switch my brush to 0% hardness. I'm going to turn my opacity way down to like 10% or less. I'll leave it at 10 just to make this go kind of fast. And we're going to pick a slightly different blue. Maybe I'll pick like this bluish green. If I choose the bluish green, I could take a big brush and I'm going to start painting that bluish green. And notice what's happening. You see how it's shifting the color a little bit? Yeah. So like 10% at a time, I'm adding just little bits of this greenish tone to it. Does anybody know what complementary colors are? Yes, it is like yellow and purple and green and red and that sort of thing. It's colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel. So if it's across the street from the other color on the color wheel, it's considered a complement. And when you mix complementary colors together, they neutralize each other. They make it a little less intense. It reduces the intensity. So the opposite of blue is orange. So if I take an orange color, and again I want to keep this turned down pretty good, and I start to add orange to it, it doesn't make the blue orange, it just makes it less blue. Do you see that happening? It's sort of making it less saturated, less intense, less bold. Nothing in the world is one color. So you're going to want to like mix and match and brush over all this stuff until you find a color where you're like, okay, if that wall was in that picture and it was blue, it probably was more like that blue than a neon blue. All right, moving on to the next thing. And the most important thing is most of your photos are going to have a person in them. So I want to talk about painting flesh or painting people. Once I have done my background, now I can move back to a hard edge brush. I can move back to 100% opacity. And I'm going to choose a crayon that I think his skin color would look like. So if I choose, let's say, I don't know, this one, and I start painting it at 100%, at first it's going to be like, ooh, That's not good. And then a lot of people will go back to the crayon box and choose a different one, a different one, a different one. And, you know, before you know it, you've worked on it for an hour and you can't find the magic flesh colored crayon. Too much red. So again, what is the complement of red across the street? Is green, right? Now you might think, I'm painting a person. Why would I ever use green paint on a person's skin? Well, you should actually use green paint on a person's skin, because what that's going to do is neutralize the fact that you use too much red. Another thing too is when you do this, you want to paint all of their skin and hair. That includes the eyebrows, it includes obviously the hair, it includes the whites of the eyes, the teeth. You want to paint everything with this base color, and you want to try not to go out of the lines like I just did right here. Then you're like, oh crap, I got to find that background color again. So here, let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a mistake. So I'm painting his face, and I'm like, oh no. Oh no, this looks terrible, right? What you can do is you can pick this color back up. And the way that you do that is you use the Eyedropper Tool. The Eyedropper Tool is right here. And what that'll allow me to do is get this color, because there's no way you're going to remember what color you mixed when you were doing all this. So now I can get my brush, go back at this and clean it up, and it's the same color. So if you do make a mistake and go out of the lines, it's not, you don't have to start over and panic and get all sad. So there's his skin. It looks like he's got bright orange hair. It looks like his skin is a little bit, you guys said it's too red, so I'm going to try to fix that. I think it's a little bit too orange, so I'm going to try to fix that as well. I'm going to take the brush, I'm going to change now to a soft brush and do that same thing again where I turn the opacity way down to under 10%. And with this brush, I'm going to go at this with a little bit of green. So I'm going to take this like neutral-ish green, and I'm going to start putting green on his skin. Doesn't turn his face green, but what does it do? It sort of kills the orange and it makes it more natural. The hair is actually just a slightly different pigment than the rest of your skin. Most people want to be like, oh, they have blonde hair, I'm going to go for the yellow crayon. And it never looks right. So start with the base being the skin tone, and then add the complement to bring it down. That looks much better. Okay, let's add a little bit more in the forehead here. You can always go back. I'm painting right over the lips, right over the teeth, everything with this green. Okay, that looks better. He's starting to look like an actual human. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now there's a few other things that you need to know about painting people, and that's this. This sector of the face, like if you divide the face into 3 sections, the forehead, the middle section that includes the eyes and nose, and the bottom section that includes the mouth, it goes like this. There's more yellow up here in the top section. There's more reds in the middle section. This is where the most blood flow of your face is, your eyes and your nose. And then the bottom section is generally more gray. It's more neutral, except for the lips. People always want to grab the red crayon and go for the lips, so let's do that and make that mistake. If you go at this and you're like, okay, lips are red, boom, it looks like the Joker. Let's get rid of that. It has more red in it, but you never want to go that far away from the original skin tone. So if I do add a little bit of red to it, I'm going to add a very little bit of red to it and just go, okay, a little bit of pink right here, a little bit of pink right here, a little bit right under here, a little bit of pink in the cheeks. There we go. Now what did I say? The top section is mostly what?
Yellow.
Yellowish. So I'm going to grab like this neutral yellowish color, and I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. So that's this top section. So it goes from yellow to pink, and then the bottom is mostly
Wait, so why is it yellow?
gray. Why is it yellow?
Yeah.
It doesn't have as much blood flow, and your skin is really thin in your forehead. And what's behind your skin? On your forehead. Your skull. It has a yellowish tone to it. It's just how it is. I don't know. You'd have to ask probably a doctor, but I just know how to paint it. And I know that you need a little bit more yellow in that section. Now, a lot of times people want to go to white because they want to say, all right, well, I got to make the teeth and the eyes white. Watch how weird this gets when you do that. If I paint 100% white, that's what happens. Like, it doesn't look too bad, but when you get close up to it, it looks really creepy. In the teeth especially. Look at it. They're like blue, right? Like, what just happened to his face? He looks like a psycho. You don't want to do that. So the way that you want to do this is parts that have white in it or parts that have less color, like the whites of the eyes and the teeth. You do this technique. You take an eraser with a soft edge and a really low opacity, like, again, 10% or so. And with that eraser, you could zoom in really close and you can go, okay, I'm going to whiten the teeth a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of that color out, just like 2 clicks on each tooth. Just like that. That's enough. Okay, and then we'll do the same up here. We're going to take some of that color, which is mostly the flesh color, and I'm going to take a little bit of color out of that and a little bit of color out of that. Just a few clicks with the soft eraser. And now, again, he's looking like a human. How am I going to know if you did a good job? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Yeah, ill, right? I'm going to say ill first, and then I'm going to look at it, and it looks like some sort of creepy porcelain doll. And I'll be like, well, I know that you used a little bit of some different colors in here, because if it looks like a bad coloring book, like everything is just solid, I know that you didn't do what I told you to do.
Wait, what's that? Oh.
This is like that little bit of eraser that I used. So you're seeing a little bit of that showing through. So back to front, get a base tone, brush in some other colors, neutralize those colors with the complement, and when you're all done, you have this thing that looks like it could have been a color photo. Last little bit of info is you want to use a little bit of the color of the background. This is like bluish or whatever color you choose as the background. You want to leave a little bit of that in the skin and in the clothes, because if he was sitting in a blue room, some of that blue, I'm adding blue to that, it totally looks normal. He would have blue in his hair if he was sitting in a blue room, because the light will bounce and reflect. And so to spill background onto the kid is a good thing. To spill kid onto the background, that is bad. Okay, so I'm just taking blue on the side of his face here, and that looks pretty good. Thanks a lot for joining me. Hopefully you got a little bit from that, and you can see here that I'm showing you the before and after of the old photo that we did in the demo. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Like, there's like a little button that they put on the laptop or something, and then they say click it, and then you can never even miss a video.
That's if you subscribe.